So this is the Swanner Nature Preserve in western Summit County. So Park City back here, the canyons. I'm actually standing on one of the upper areas of the preserve, and then here's the wetlands that we're preserving. Then this is Interstate 80. So we started working on this project nearly 20 years ago, and it's the genesis of my thinking, having to go through the process to create this wonderful area. I thought, wouldn't it be nice if we couldn't sort of codify or formulate what it is that we learned in this project and take it to other communities so they can create green infrastructure and have it linked up to the open spaces that they want to preserve. This is a site plan. It was done by a developer down in Flower Mound, Texas. And this is a piece of old family property, and this is basically a hand sketch that he did of his property trying to do a conservation subdivision. And I was a speaker at a conference down there in Flower Mound, and he actually brought this in and asked if he couldn't put it up on the screen and show people what he had just done, literally in his kitchen, drawing this area up, and he was so happy about his ability to preserve all this family land. The guy was almost in tears, you know, telling the crowd about what he was attempting to do. Had no idea what the four-step design process was. He just knew in his heart and his ethic that this is the way he wanted to treat his property. So if that's right for a certain community and they want to give us a call, we'll come in and help those things, you know, come to fruition. So as I mentioned earlier, it's the development pattern that I've noticed over the years that really bother people. So we have a main road corridor right there, and then we're starting to see this sort of sprawling out from the main road corridor. So just an example of what could be different. You know, let's concentrate areas back off the road, leave these big view sheds open, and they're big bulky areas for agricultural uses. Create these areas that are way off the road so that you're not actually looking at development with mixed uses and mixed densities. And again, another cluster here, trying to leave these areas in the foreground more or less open. Just, and again, an example of a project that's far enough off the road that you don't actually see what's going on in there. You get the trees and you know you got some two-story houses in there, but beyond that you really don't know what's in there. So we focus on bulky types of open spaces in these types of projects. As many units as possible on the open space. We've got a couple that are landlocked in here. And these are just some of the tools that we use when we're focusing on green infrastructure. Conservation easements, conservancy lots, transferable development rights, purchase of development rights, density bonuses, endowments that are created by developers as they come in with their projects, donating money to the city from some of their profits so that we have sort of a war chest to take care of open space. TND, traditional neighborhood development, and then a little used tool called the Landowners Compact, which just allows planners to talk to the neighbors of adjacent neighbors of a parcel that's being contemplated for development. We can bring the neighbors in and say, you know, this piece is being worked on. How can we make some open space connections through your property? And I think that's probably where I'll leave it. Yeah, because we're just going to run down through this list, and let's don't do that. One last exhibit, and then I'll turn the mic off, is the idea of a conservancy lot. If you look at these lots, you'll notice that there's different shaded areas. This is an area right off the road where we have the structures. The whole lot, number 3, let's say, is owned fee simple, but it's got the conservation easement on it that says you can do whatever you want back in here. You can pave that with asphalt and raise Dobermans. We don't care. But when you're out here, there's going to be some restrictions, limited use of those areas. And then when you get out even further into the other parts of the parcel, then there is really no real estate development. So the point is, there is a gradient or a spectrum of development that can occur within a subdivision and within lots. And it makes a very flexible situation for designers like myself. So a couple of final ideas. Vision for open space conservation. Have that as a specific thing in your mind if you're interested in doing this type of work. Expand your definition of open space and sustainability. You know, think about creating an open space network map as a specific deliverable that you want to have out of your planning process. Conservation design concurrent with development process. and conservation tools to augment the conservation style of development. So all those things can be put into your public policies, and you generate a different kind of development pattern and a different type of land use. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to Marcy.
One of the things we did you know, I go back to my original thing we're talking about. You got to get your vision first. You got to talk to your people and know what it is you really want. Well, a few of us people were kind of ahead of that, and we were kind of jumping over here and saying we think we want trails, and so we jumped way over here, and we applied for a grant through the Regional Commission, through the National Parks, Recreation, Trails, Conservation Assistance. Something like that, RTCA. Okay, and so we're kind of working on this part, but we want to have the trails and things that we do. Obviously, need to come back to the bigger plan and into our vision. And Marcy's been great at helping us kind of figure out how we can work this all in together. And so she's going to talk a little bit about her program and where we might go with that, because we're assuming that one of these big circles is going to be trails and open space, and that's again a little bit jump ahead, but some of us have a crystal ball. It's still on, Marcy. I didn't even do all.
Thanks, Claudia. As Claudia mentioned, I'm a community planner. I do have a interagency federal government background. So I have worked for the National Park Service as well as the Bureau of Land Management and the Forest Service. And why is that important? Because each entity plans different, and today's session is about planning. I spent time with the Forest Service both at the local level and the Uinta National Forest, as well as the Washington Office Ecosystem Management and Planning specifically. What does RTCA do? Rivers Trails Conservation Assistance Program, but I'm okay with calling it Rivers and Trails because even I have a hard time saying Rivers Trails Conservation Assistance Program. We help communities statewide, I'm an actual statewide community planner, implement their visions. And we've heard a lot about visions today, and I think apparently we all have the common understanding that visions are a part of our planning processes. I have to mirror Sumner's comment about having employees work for someone else, because my student that currently is working for me will begin working for Green Space Design next month. And I was at a Green Space Design workshop in Pocatello, Idaho last year, and an employee came, or actually a motorized interest came up to me and said, "You're from the National Park Service, what are you doing here?" You know, and proceeded to tell me about his feelings about federal land management agencies' policy on motorized recreation. And I just want to mention that Rivers and Trails does both motorized and non-motorized planning. We'll talk a little bit about some of the products and services that we provide in the middle of this slideshow. There's about 70 RTCA employees nationwide. Like I said, I'm the only full-time planner in the state of Utah. We also help cover southern Idaho and parts of Wyoming. As Claudia mentioned, the regional council, as well as some other interested partners, had come to RTCA to officially apply for our assistance. This was awarded, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. We basically try to create a network of parks, rivers, riparian areas, open space, trails, and promote really what communities want in their own areas. So if it's rural Utah, where I lived for 15 years working for the Bureau of Land Management, they may have a different perception than Salt Lake City, who wants a developed, family-oriented trail with pavement. So we really help communities create their own community vision.